I'm Judy Benz. I'm the chairman of the Florida Historical Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask to have the roll call.
Judy Benz.
Here.
Steve Bertman. Don Browning Jr.
He's here, but he stepped away for just a moment.
Okay. Bill Clay.
Here.
Tony Cortez.
Here.
Michael Francis. Rick Gonzalez. Kathleen Kaufman. John Phelps. He's here.
He's trying to unmute himself.
Yeah.
Finally here.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
And Cliff Smith.
Present.
Cliff's here, right?
Yeah, Cliff is here.
Right.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Good. We do have a quorum?
Yes.
Fine. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce the commissioners and then the staff. And so, like I said, I am Judy Benz. I am the chairman, and I am an archaeologist associated with the University of West Florida over in Pensacola. Tony, our newest member.
Yes, May was my first meeting. I am a political fundraiser and am involved in legislative politics for the last 20 years. So John has had to deal with me before. I live in Tallahassee, have since I went to FSU, so 22 almost years ago now. So live in and have restored a couple historic properties.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
And live in Myers Park now, but originally from Crystal River, Florida, but Tallahassee for most of my adult life.
Crystal River?
That's right.
Big size.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Bill Clegg. I'm the Manatee County Attorney, and I was appointed by Senate President Galvano for the end of his term.
Thank you. So let's go to the folks on Zoom. John Phelps, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself, then go to John. All right.
Hey, Judy. My name is John Phelps, and I have been an employee of the state of Florida in some capacity or other for 55 years. The last 48 years, I worked for the legislature, but on June 30th, I left the legislature for retirement purposes. During that time with the legislature, I was clerk of the House for 20 years and staff director of the Senate Rules Committee for 12 years and director of the Historic Capitol for 4 years.
Thank you, John. Mr. Browning.
Yes, I'm John Browning. I'm live in Palatka, Florida. I'm on the Florida Transportation Commission and have been involved with a lot of historical projects for years. Of course, I worked at the White House. I've worked for a lot of different politicals, and I've been up here a long time. So good to be on here.
Thank you, John. Cliff?
Yeah, this is Dr. Cliff Smith, senior planner for the city of Sarasota. I'm on the National Review Board and the Florida Historic Commission, and I've been around for a while.
Michael Francis, introduce yourself. Unmute yourself.
I'm here. Thanks, Judy. I was having some technical issues this morning. My apartment is in a cement bunker, so that's why I'm not on video screen at the moment. But I'm Dr. Michael Francis. I'm the Huff Family Chair of Florida Studies at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg campus. I also serve on the National Register Review Board, and I'm delighted to join you this morning.
Thank you. Welcome. Any other commissioners online that I don't recognize? Right. So, Angie, why don't you start off with the staff introductions?
Oh, well, you want to go first, Alyssa?
Yeah.
Sure, I can go first.
Yes, you can.
I am Alyssa Lotain, and I am the brand new Director of the Division of Historical Resources and the State Historic Preservation Officer as of July 15th. So,
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, tell me where you came from. Oh, I've actually been here for close to 20 years, so I'm not new to the department or new to the division. Before I was the Bureau Chief for Historic Preservation. So I know a lot of the commission through that, and I have a background in grants, running way back special category grants program. Worked here since 2003, so extremely happy to be in this role and honored to be here.
Thank you.
So I'm Angie Tomlinson. I'm the assistant director. I've been the assistant director since 2016, but I've also worked here longer than that. I was, prior to that, program manager. And then at OPS, I started at OPS, part-time OPS in the Florida Main Street program. But right now, operations falls under me as well as the grants program. And then we also have Katie Millar.
I'm Katie Millar. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Bureau of Archaeological Research and the State Archaeologist for Florida. And I've been here about 5 years now. Prior to that, I worked for the National Park Service for close to 8 years, running their archaeological labs there in their archaeology program, Southeast Archaeological Center.
Sarah?
I'm Sarah Lico. I'm the program administrator for the division, and I'm the liaison for the Florida Historical Commission and help get these meetings put together. I also help manage our federal grants, which takes up a lot of my time, including our disaster grants for Hurricanes Irma and Michael. So there's a lot of other things. Those are the majority.
Mike?
My name is Michael Hart. I'm the coordinator of the State Historical Marker Program, and I'm here to handle the tech support for the Zoom. I've been with the division since 2008.
John Grandage?
I'm John Grandage. I'm the Public Engagement and Historic Site Development Director for DHR, so I'm over our outreach programs and then also do all of the work with these wonderful folks over here from DMS to restore and manage all of the historic sites. I've been in the department for about 10 years, previously served as historian for the State Archives and also the director of the Grove Museum.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online?
There is no one online.
Do we want to have our guests that are in person introduce themselves?
Sure, I'll start. Good morning, I'm Ryan Mickenhouse. I'm the Bureau Chief of Property Services with the Department of Management Services. I've been with DMS for about 6 years and state government a little over a decade.
Thank you, John.
My name is Ken Swasser. I'm a community engagement liaison, been with DMS a few months now, with the state overall about 8 years.
Patrick Gillespie, I'm the Deputy Secretary of Business Operations, which is both state and other areas.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, welcome, everyone. It looks like we have a nice agenda, and so the first order of business is to adopt this agenda, and in order to do that, I need a motion and a second. So would someone like to move that we adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tony. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda, please signal or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good. All opposed? Thank you very much. The agenda is adopted. The next thing that I need a motion for is the approval of the minutes from our last meeting in May. We received a copy at least a week or two ago. I hope you've all taken a look at it. And would someone like to move the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Tony, you'll second. Good. All in favor, please say aye or signal. Aye.
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 Good. And therefore, the agenda is unanimously approved, I'm sorry. Now, time for my comments. I have a couple of items I want to talk about, but first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate the Commission for the support of this new coalition that was formed to have one goal, which was special category grant funding. The 6 statewide organizations, including ours, banded together and asked our membership of all of our organizations to meet with their legislators at home in support of special category grants in specific or in general. Hats off to the Florida Trust. They really helped us in their lobbying efforts here in the Capitol with I guess you could call it a pamphlet, that explained, had a picture and a paragraph on every subject, and lobbied with a one pager that had all of our logos on the bottom, and it said very clearly that the historic preservation and archaeological communities in the state are strongly banding together. We had had 2 years of no funding and previous years of lousy funding, and this is our business as a commission, is to not just rank and vet the proposals for applications for special category grants, but to help the division in getting them funded. And so I know where the money comes from. We all know where the money comes from. So it was time to remind them of this wonderful program. And even I was surprised that we were fully funded. It's been, what did you say, since 2002 or 8? Anyway, a long time.
2002 may have been the last time we had the full list.
That's amazing. And but with the full funding, we need to look down the road, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. But we need to look down the road. If we are continued to be successful in getting large amounts of money for our list, we have to be very careful of who's on the list. We rank them, and there is a ranking. That means the top ones are best, and the bottom ones are the worst. And we have to talk about that a little bit and think about it more carefully now that we are hopefully back in the money. I also will bring up a little bit later, and under other business, a couple of other issues that we need to pay attention to. But I think we are on a good path. I think the commission, wow, there he is.
I apologize for being late.
No, it's all right.
You want me to
Okay.
start?
I'll be brief for now.
After you're ready. Just like
Good morning. At any rate, now I would like to move to Director Lotane, opening comments and what's been going on in the division more than 2 weeks. Thank you, Lisa, and welcome.
Well, I will, thank you, Dr. Benz. I will try to do it justice. And if I miss anything, all the staff here, please stop me and correct me with anything that I get wrong. I am really excited and really honored to be in this role. It wasn't something I expected. It happened very quickly over literally a matter of days. Thank you to Secretary Byrd for selecting me and Governor DeSantis for the SHPO appointment. And you'll hear more from me as we go along. If the commission is agreeable, I sort of wanted to meld together the DHR report and the Bureau of Historic Preservation report because I'm still doing sort of dual roles there. One of the sad parts of this is now I get to replace myself as Bureau Chief. So since the position has not been vacant in 11 years, I'm kind of starting from scratch. So we'll try to get that done as soon as possible. My first week actually started out with a nice case of COVID, so that was fun. Followed by my second week, which was in DeLand. We had the Preservation on Main Street Conference in DeLand, our annual conference where we partner with a local Main Street community. And also for the last 3 years, we've been partnering with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. We had over 200 people at our conference. I'm still working on the final count. Thanks to our state Main Street coordinator, Kathy Beck, and the DeLand Main Street Association for putting that on, and the Florida Trust. Secretary of State Cord Byrd visited our conference. He toured the downtown. His family also came with him, which was wonderful. They also attended the Preservation Awards, where we awarded the Main Street Awards and also the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation Awards. So we had a really nice evening. The Secretary has been very supportive of Main Street program and has visited a couple of our Main Streets earlier on after he had just gotten here. So we look forward to him hopefully traveling to more of our Main Streets in the future. And our conference in 2023 is going to be in downtown Ocala Main Street in August of 2023. So we really hope that you all can join us there. More to come on that. I will start next with the budget. I'll let Angie discuss the grants in more detail later, but I do want to talk about some of the things that we received in the budget this year. It was an exceptional year. It's not like any year that I have ever seen before, the amount of funds that we got for grant funding and some of our other projects that we've really worked on for a long time. And so we're really thankful to the legislature for those appropriations. I'll just say our positions are stable. I don't think we gained any positions, but we also didn't lose any positions. So that's always really helpful. Our staff did receive the 5.38% raise, cost of living raise, which we're quite thankful for. One huge thing is we got our artifact collection facility funded in the budget for $13.4 million, and that's something that we've been looking at for maybe 10 plus years, and we've had studies done. So the collection facility will be placed out back of where our current collection facility is at Mission San Luis is the plan. So I think we've already put that out, or in the process of putting that out for solicitation for architects. So that'll be a couple-year project, but our facility right now is full to the brim with collections, and so we're putting things in every corner we can, and even storing some things I found out outside under tarps, and under screening. So we've really got to get this moving and protect those artifacts. Like I said, we'll be working with the Department of Management Services in order to bid that and get that moving soon. And let's see, we also get a historic properties maintenance fund every year that's $500,000. I think we've gotten that for the last 4 or 5.
No, longer than that.
Longer than that years.
Previous director.
Which is a big victory to be able to maintain our historic properties, because we have leases on several properties that we have museums in and staff in here in Tallahassee, and various other cities. So this past year, we used that historic properties maintenance fund to do some work on the carriage house over at the Martin House property. That's almost complete. It looks wonderful. We've done some work on the Miami Circle, which I know it still needs some more. We're still working on that. And then we've done 3 building assessments on the Union Bank building. We do have a lease and sublease to FAMU Black Archives, the Union Bank building, which is directly in front of the Historic Capitol. And that building has been underutilized for a long time, so we want to get it in good condition and then work with FAMU in the coming year to reactivate that building. The Messer House, we also did an assessment on. The Messer House, if you've been to Mission San Luis, the house sits directly in the middle of the site. For many years, there was thought about moving it, so it's kind of gotten, again, underutilized, and sort of the maintenance on it has not been taken care of the way it probably should have been. So we're doing an assessment there and going to try to get that home back up to, it is a National Register building, and try to get it back up to par. My thought is that house, it is on the National Register and is part of the history of the site. The people live there. This is not always a static site at the Mission. It didn't always look, as the Mission looked. And so people always lived there, and we want to maintain that part of the history of the site as well, and utilize it. There's a lot of things that we can do there for visitors. Also, we have done an assessment of the Brokaw McDougal House. That is the home over behind Leon High School, and the Department of, the Division of Arts and Culture, they've changed their name, has offices in that building. So we've done an assessment there. We plan to do some work on possibly replacing the lift with a ramp, doing an ADA restroom, possibly even some electrical upgrades there. And then Union Bank, we're also planning to do some ADA restroom, wood rot, roof repairs, some smaller things on that. In addition to those state funds, this year we received funding from the American Rescue Plan within the department's budget, and it was, I believe, backup bill, if I have that correctly, and I'll let Angie talk a little more about that later, but we received $1.932 million, which was really incredible. With some of those funds, we have projects assigned to rethatch the council house at the Mission, finally. And I believe this time we're going to use the faux thatching, which I think looks very realistic, and it will get us a lot longer life out of that, because I think we've been getting like 8 or 10 years out of that and having to replace that.
What is the fire retardancy of that?
I don't know. John, do you have any idea?
We tested it, like with a lighter.
Okay.
It's good, it's actually specific used a lot in theme parks, so think about Disney big, that structures. And,
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I've just been around when it, when the original
yeah,
embraced fire, so, okay.
yeah, this one is good. And there's a fire suppression system that's in.
Yeah, I didn't notice that was, I thought was added later, but yeah, I got you, that's right.
It's on the church now, right? That case, and I saw it not too long ago, and it was great.
And the bats haven't moved back.
No, that's included.
Oh, right. The special bats, they're very special bats.
So that's why you were sitting up there smoking cigarettes, testing the fire?
Real testing, yeah.
So also with the ARPA money, we're planning to do some roofing work, some minor things on the Messer House where we've got a couple of leaks, and then also on that Burcom McDougal House, where Cultural Affairs is. We've also got a project to do HVAC work across various DHR sites, to correct and replace a lot of our units there. Also, we plan to do work with the ARPA funds on fire suppression systems at the Knott House, the Martin House, and the BAR collections facility, which I understand did not have a system in it originally, which is pretty amazing.
Right.
Also, we are planning to do ADA upgrades at the fort at Mission San Luis. It's finally, after all these years, getting a lift and up to the second floor of the fort. So they'll actually be able to use that for interpretation rather than just for storage. Also, the carriage house I spoke about over at the Governor Martin House, we will be adding a ramp to that as well, and it really does look great. The Burcom McDougal House, as I mentioned, will also get an ADA restroom upgrade under those funds. We are already working on legislative budget requests for next year, so I've already put those in Wednesday for our division, and so we'll be discussing them in the department in the next month or so. So time marches on. Florida Master Site File, this will now get into more of the Bureau of Historic Preservation updates. The Florida Master Site File, our inventory of historic and cultural sites, turns 50 years old this year. So even though we had other site files at state parks and universities, the official site file did start in 1972, and we're nearing 250,000 resources soon, so we plan to highlight some of that in our media materials. For our National Register, thank you to the commissioners who were here yesterday and on the phone yesterday to review our National Register nominations. I meant to bring a copy of the agenda, which I will get and pass out to all of you, but we did have a shorter list than usual, but all of the nominations passed. We actually had a relisting, which is a little interesting. So thank you all for being at that meeting and helping us to get through those nominations. The reason we had a shorter list is for two reasons. One reason is because Dr. Smith will like this. I have had staff focusing on looking at the Sarasota survey from about a year ago we received. There were about 7,000 properties in that, and I've had them go through that survey and concur or not concur with a lot of the determinations for that, which will help us as time goes on and projects happen in Sarasota. And then the other reason is because our staff has been helping me with reviews of draft historic structure surveys. So one of my initiatives has always been and will continue to be a director survey. Survey is not the most exciting thing that people want to hear about, but it's really one of the foundation items that we need in the division when it comes to our compliance reviews of federal and state undertakings and permitting actions. And if you're not familiar with compliance review, we have a role of review and comment. We are not the enforcers, but when it comes to all of these federal and state projects, if we receive individual projects, it's really hard, and especially been really hard during the Hurricane Michael funding in the Panhandle, to see one property at a time. And then what you realize is over time, you have a historic district that's now it's lost 12 properties, or now it's lost 20 properties, in a process of years. So that's definitely happening, and that's what we've seen recently. So these surveys started last fall, and we are doing countywide, just historic structures for Calhoun, Jackson, Liberty, Gulf, Wakulla, and Franklin counties. And so we've received the draft. National Register staff helped me get through those. And the final products for those will be due on August 31st. and we expect to receive thousands and thousands of site forms from those. One of the things that we have unfortunately found from the surveys is there has been a lot of losses in historic properties in the Panhandle region due to Hurricane Michael and just other, lack of maintenance. So we're looking forward to finding out. I wish we'd had the survey before the storm, but at least doing the right thing now. And survey is something I want to continue to do with our federal appropriations every year. We did use $50,000 this year of our federal funds, HPF funds, to do a rural and underserved resource survey in Gadsden County. So that's also on the same timeline and should be coming in shortly. And we plan to expand that next year, depending on the funding we have, to do at least one of those each year. Let's see, where am I at? So next would be the compliance and review section I mentioned. They continue to be a little short-staffed, so I'm very proud of them that they have been still keeping up with their 30-day deadlines and have still been able to review all of their projects. We do have 2 employees that we've selected. I have paperwork on my desk in there after this meeting to sign. And the compliance review section has, in the last few years, they've probably reviewed 12,000 to 13,000 projects a year. So it's a huge undertaking. We have sort of a room of 11 people that's what they do. And so it's one of the lesser-known things, but one of the more important things that we do at the division, or in the Bureau, I should say. So also, in my new oversight, under my new oversight is the Museum of Florida History, which is a new role for me. And I hope to next meeting have more of an update, possibly have our museum director come and even do an update, kind of like we've been doing. But we do have a lot of construction going on, as you heard. The Mission is part of the Museum of Florida History infrastructure, also the Knott House and the Grove Museum. So a lot of construction going on at the Mission and the Messer House. The biggest thing that has not been publicly announced, but there will be a lot of work going on this plaza out front. If you've been to the museum, you know the museum is directly under that plaza. We have had water intrusion issues on the plaza for many years. And the plaza was redone
10 years.
probably 30 years, I don't know.
Well, one can argue if you look at the Florida House right now, they're continuing to work. And they have just done an extensive renovation, yet it can still, the garage still continues to leak. And if you go look, they're digging it up again, so.
Yeah, well, we're hoping.
Maybe we should think about putting stop building basements in the city, in the state of Florida.
Maybe, and, it's beyond me why we selected to put the museum there, but, we are really trying to make an effort to fix this, permanently. So, we're working with DMS, and they're going to start doing some testing later in 2022, and then more invasive testing to see what the structure is like there. As part of that, we are going to have to move all of the artifacts out of the museum, and the museum is going to have to close for a period of time. So our plan is potentially Labor Day. This plan is still in the works. But if you did hear of that, I just wanted you to have advance notice that that's something that we are considering and are probably going to have to do in order for that project to take place. So
How long would it be shut down for?
it will depend on what they find.
Right, but in a
It could be
perfect
anything
world,
from
a
fixing
quarter?
leaks or taking off a portion of the roof of the plaza. It could be very,
Okay, but I mean, is it like, are we talking 6 months, a year,
we
2
don't
years?
know.
Okay.
We just don't know. But we want to protect all the artifacts. Right now, we're planning to cover the larger exhibits like the steamship and move some of our, we hope to keep everything within the building as much as possible and not have to store it anywhere else. But that is a huge project that we have coming up, and it's going to impact the museum for a long time. So, but we also hope as part of that we can do some redesign on some of the museums. Some of the exhibits are dated, and so that's one request that I've put in to hopefully receive some funding to do some planning for the museum. Also, the Knott House Museum I mentioned, if you're not familiar with the Knott House, it's over on Park Avenue, and it's one of our interpretive sites. The Knott family lived there, and so we're also looking at refreshing some of the exhibits there. We've also got some construction and HVAC projects going on there, and trying to refresh that museum some. So we're hoping that we can get it back open soon as well. It's been closed for a few months. And let's see, Mission San Luis is undergoing American Association of Museums certification. So that's wonderful, I think. And their report is due to AAM on August 12th. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes. And I really hope to get you all out to tour some of our sites, if you're interested, so that you can see them. I know we've talked about having meetings off-site. Maybe that's something we could talk about as well.
Yeah, we've met at Mission San Luis once or twice in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a lovely place to have a meeting. You know, it's connected, certainly the size is right, and then we can have a nice tour of behind the scenes as well as the exhibits themselves. I think we would enjoy that.
Okay, work on that. And then finally, our statewide historic preservation plan that we do every 5 years has been approved by the National Park Service. So it just needs to go through our communications review here for some final tweaking, and then we'll be able to release that hopefully September, October online, and we'll determine, I don't think we're going to print the full thing this time, probably a abbreviated version we'll print of that. So I think that's my full report, unless you all have questions about anything. Actually, one last thing, the tax credit legislation, if you've got any questions about that, I know it went through all the way to the appropriations and Ways and Means last year. I think we talked about that at a previous meeting. But that's something the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation plans to run again this year. So I can get them maybe to come back at our next meeting and be a part of the meeting and talk about the tax credit bill.
Okay, question?
Sure.
So on your LBR requests, do you have a list of those that you sent to the secretary, or is there things, you know? I view that as an important first step for things outside of special category grants that the division needs.
I have a long list, and I don't know how far that list is going to be cut down. So right now, it's actually just with our legislative affairs person, and so they're going through it.
Who is that now?
Pierce Schuessler. Actually, I'm sorry, Catherine Woodley is actually our brand new person. She's just come, I think, this week or end of last week. So she's new to us, but also Pierce Schuessler, he's been here longer, and he does work on budget and legislative.
And that list gets reviewed by OPB staff from the governor's office?
Yes, but it will go through the department.
Right,
first,
I
and then the
understand,
department will-
but then it goes up to the executive office of the governor.
That's my
and
understanding. You may know better than I do that process, but,
then they will go to someone like you.
Well, Judy, we talked about, you know, the importance of lobbying your legislators to make sure that funding happens. But I think it's important also to make sure that things that our division cares about are in the LBR, so then even if the legislature does it, we can point back to the governor and say, you requested this, your own agency.
Yes, no, I think that as we move along, we need to help the division in any way that we can. It was just special categories was such an egregious problem, the funding for it, that was top of our list. And,
Well, I mean, man offense, you think that man right there. I mean, you know, frankly, there was, you know.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, I think that we're on the right path, and now we need to, number one, be aware of what the division is asking for from the legislature after all the things are approved, and second, which are the most crucial. Yeah. You know, how can we help you the best? And between all of us on the commission, we have different connections and different contacts and different groups that we can get support from, in addition to special category funding, which I think we just need to keep beating that drum. Yeah. Oh, they'll forget. Out of sight, out of mind.
and I have my ranking. I've turned in what I think should happen, but I want to be in line with what the department wants to do before I sort of share any of that. So next meeting, we'll for sure update you.
Yeah, yeah. And then think about, you know, how we can help you. you know, what would be, sort of, I don't mean priorities, but kind of a strategy we can divide and conquer on the, commission. Those of us that are more connected with one of your issues or another of the request, in addition as a group.
I can tell you staffing is one thing that's a top priority of mine. I know the discussion we had at the last meeting, you know, that our salaries are, not keeping up with the times, and they're, you know, that's a discussion we've had at the department level, so that's something that's being worked on.
Hey, please God, did you find an architect? Oh,
I am
Christ,
not.
Rick is
I
gonna
currently do
live.
not have an architect
Okay.
position. We have actually downgraded those positions, but not able to find
Right,
a person at the salary that I had, so.
yeah, I hear you.
I do have a competent person who is reviewing tax credits and helping with that, but, she is not an architect. She's a PhD in historic preservation.
Well, I think that is, at least in my mind right now, is surfacing as the biggest need, for the division, because of all this wonderful new money that we've gotten, for grants. Architecture is included in 90% of them. And here we have project archaeologists, project architects that come in with, the proposals and that also, if funded, guide the architectural activities. There's no one from here looking over their shoulder. No one. I'm not saying they're bad guys, but we don't want to see a building fall down. We don't want to see an accident happen in construction. All of the things that a historic preservation architect is aware of and implements. We need to find a way. I think that's, if you had to rank what I think is most crucial for the division, it would be to find a way to get an architect. And any way we can do that, help you do that, we will.
Or, I mean, or at least contract with somebody for some reviews.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's problematic or
Talked about
cost
it.
expensive or.
That, it would be very costly,
Yeah.
and difficult, I think, not to have that person be supervised, you know,
Yeah, but my point back to you would be is, you know, Tim's burden, you know, while he was here, was having to deal with, Rick, over this issue, and we were always lucky enough that Rick was on board, and he would, you know, when we're going through the review process, he would point things out.
Right.
You know, if something happens to Rick, God forbid, where does that knowledge, you know? You're not gonna get it from me.
And one of the things I know I've personally heard is on some of the grants, people have said, well, you know, it was fine when it went through the commission, and now you're telling us we have to change it, because we used to have an architect go through all those grant applications in advance.
Right.
And make very specific, changes or suggestions, about the type of work they should be doing, so.
You know, I'm sure it's gonna be like Afghanistan, there really is no solution, but in the end, you know, it's something that, like,
I
move
appreciate
forward,
the support, and that's certainly something I'll bring up to management.
Right, you know, and there are some options as you know, take a hard look at it. You know, you've had no luck hiring one, but there still is an ever-increasing need for one. And that's something perhaps that the department's chief of staff, the secretary himself, will be able to come up with a way to help us in this. Obviously, the traditional ways are not working, and somewhere in these batches of grants, spending all of this money is a problem that we're not going to be aware of. And, it would make the department look bad, it would make the division look bad, and everybody would start pointing fingers. And so the way to kind of help the people above the division help with this problem is to bring it to their attention, that it actually, in a way, is dangerous for the division not to have an architect overlooking all of the architectural projects that are being implemented. It is very dangerous. And I don't think they know that. I don't think they've ever looked at it that way. But you've done your part, and Tim did his part with doing the searches and coming up empty. And I think as a commission that we need to help you with that whenever you think you need it. You know, if Rick needs to go with you or not, or I can help, or any of us, on the commission can help explain the concerns we have and that do exist right now to the people that are above the division. I think Tim exhausted the division's options. Now it's time for some real help, and there are ways, and there is money. They just don't know about it yet. You know, it's not just another staff position. And Rick isn't even here to ring the bell.
I do have one question. Is there any possibility of doing any kind of resource sharing with the universities or any of the local agencies?
And not thought of doing that, that's something we could explore.
School, you know, the fancy architecture, you know.
I've done that with my own client with agreements with them where we just couldn't fill a spot or they just couldn't. It's a very tough job market. My own county government that I work with, that I represent, is struggling to keep up. And you've got cool stuff in the basement, but you don't have a machine to print money. You know, there's just only so much that can be done when the economy is this high. The jobs report today is, once again, they're going to have to raise rates more than they thought they were, and this is going to go on for a while. So I just would ask you to consider if that's an option, if they could lend you somebody, or you could do some kind of resource sharing agreement with them. You know, maybe they can provide us somebody that could do that, and we can pay them some revenue to cover their costs. I'm just trying to offer ideas. I mean, it may be that there's too much in the way.
Well, University of Florida has the historic architecture program. They've had it for decades. But they're, you know, I know what the university's going to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've actually even explored in the past getting some assistance for the Main Street program from, like, architecture students, but then you run into people
Like
that have
secondary
tier standards and their licenses.
That's a problem.
Well, the universities, the professors, speaking as a former president, are scarce, and you want to keep them, and they have responsibilities, so, and they're usually very highly paid in engineering, architecture, the hard sciences. But it's worth the conversation, you know. You would probably, they need something called release time, for a faculty member, then that release would have to be paid for by somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not free.
No, it's not free, no. And usually someone who is not a junior faculty member, who is not working towards tenure or needing to, advance, it's usually a senior professor who can spare the time.
Good idea. I'll think about that. And I think one of the things people don't realize about the architects, they don't just review the grants. They review the tax credit projects because of National Park Service. They review, in some cases, state projects, you know, state properties that are historic, that are being brought to us for review, especially state parks. You know, in the past, when Dave Farrow, many years ago, was here, he even worked with the historic Capitol. You know, and would go.
Sure.
He's sort of like the architect at the Capitol a little bit. So we've kind of really lost that. And DMS has filled a lot of that role, helping us with our historic preservation projects, and we have a great relationship with them on that side. But the projects we review in the office could still use attention.
Yeah. Well, keep us posted.
Alicia,
Yes, go ahead.
Is this a problem for all state agencies, or is it just unique to the Department of State? It sounds to me like there are a lot of architects in the employ of the state, and I just wonder if somehow we've been singled out, not being able to get competitive rates.
Our architect positions have traditionally been the lowest of any agencies. If you can go to Florida Has a Right to Know and run a list from there, we are, I think, the second lowest, or we're the second lowest when we were back trying to advertise, and we just didn't have the salary rate really to go any higher than we were. I had actually a couple people interested at the time. If I'd been able to get the salary maybe $10,000 or $15,000 higher, I could have hired those people. But it just didn't work out. So yes, there are other architects at other agencies, just for whatever reason ours are.
Well, Judy, this may be a place to begin, which would be to elevate the level of architect that's in these positions. Just move into a different salary range, if that's an option.
Yes, that would be a wonderful option. You know, second from the bottom, you know, that's no place to be.
No.
with all the need that we have, and obviously have exhausted the traditional, options of getting them. Yeah, I think that's a good strategy, John. I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, it's possible we could find another position, because we, like I said, we did downgrade the position,
Yeah,
and do other things with those, but we would need that extra salary rate to sort of bring that position up to a.
so money could actually solve your problem.
Yeah.
Salary rate.
Well,
Yeah, well, yeah.
good Lord, money can solve any problem, so, I mean,
Well,
let's be
right.
clear.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and that's what people that worry about and support, the division, need to know, that, it's not an unsolvable problem to get another $50,000 or something like that, whatever it is that would make it competitive, and,
That's recurring dollars,
That's right. It's the toughest money to get.
Yeah, it's not a one-time expense.
No, it's the toughest money to get, but there is a lot of money in Florida right now.
So it could probably be tagged on to the other requests that we had made for the adjustment.
Good. Obviously, we get the concern. And, thank you, John, and thank you for letting us know it's second from the bottom.
That's the last time I checked, and it's, you can actually go run your own list. I've run it a lot of times and included it with my paperwork, so,
Good.
I hope when you talk to Tim, you can tell him about your first experience running this meeting and how this continues to plague.
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah, and it wasn't even brought up by Rick, so.
Right.
Well, it's damn high time. It's kind of like the special category grants not being funded. It's high time that we took a proactive stance on this. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we all have connections. I mean, my senator is going to be chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, Senator Broxton. He doesn't know about this. And I don't know what good he can do, but letting him know that there is a problem and that we as a state need help, never hurts. Say, if you just could get X number of dollars over there in terms of recurring money, we'd shut up. Yeah. But we
he's
do.
interested. He's interested in Florida history too.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. I'm going to see him, and this might be on top of my list.
Yeah.
He'll look at me and say, well, how much? And I'll give him a high number, and it might stick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just a constituent talking to.
But the beauty part of that is that when you look at various parts of the budget, it's not a high number.
It's not.
It's a
You're absolutely right.
tiny number. When you compare to what we spend on Medicaid or anything else, this is a very, very tiny money. But what do you think, Mr. Cortez? I mean, you're the one that was able to.
Medicaid's not optional, though.
True enough.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're required to fund that. Yeah,
But we didn't expand it, so, right.
It's all a matter of prioritization and what do we ask for, so we're not asking for too many things.
Right. Right.
Well, Elisa, can I take us in a slightly different direction before we lose you? I was interested in how large you expect the new building for maintaining architectural stuff. How big do you think that will be? Will it be in Tallahassee?
I have it in my office. I wonder if Katie remembers the square footage.
The square footage of the
Of the
building. Do you know, John?
So we did a feasibility study, we being the Department of State through Department of Management Services in 2017.
Wait, can you hear him, John? Can you hear
John,
okay?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, and the proposed square footage for the new facility to be located in Mission San Luis is 30,000 square feet. Of that, 20,000 would be for artifact storage, and 10,000 would be building support systems, public access, offices, things like that. So we're in the process of taking the feasibility study, and Alyssa mentioned that we are gonna put this out on the street as soon as we execute an agreement with our friends at DMS, and they will put it on the street, but that's the goal, is about 30,000 square feet, and that's estimated to provide about 15 to 20 years of growth for the program.
Right.
Great.
And as Katie's saying, so we have the collections program, we have, of course, outreach and education connected to the archaeology programs, but then we also have the State Conservation Lab, which is currently located in the R.A. Gray, and it's like the R.A. Gray building needs work,
And it will be shut down also during construction
Yeah.
for a while.
So we're hoping to also look at this would be like an issue for the future, is that the building will be constructed in such a way as we anticipate building onto it in the future as the state's archaeological collections continue to expand. As more development happens in Florida, that means more survey, that means more phase 3 stuff potentially, and so that means more artifacts. So it's not like we're gonna cease to collect artifacts, so we have to think about that facility expanding kind of indefinitely in the future.
Then also maybe think about trying to get those artifacts out into the public in a greater way.
And that's a big part of it too. Katie can talk about that part.
Yeah, we have a huge, well, not just a loan program, but we do it virtually. So we have artifacts across, and actually we just created an interactive map that you can click on and look at your different counties and see where state artifacts are on display in your counties. At particular exhibits, it's for free of cost at these exhibits. We help them set it up, we help them interpret it. We also, all we ask is that we make sure that they're insured and have security. We also try and emphasize that these artifacts are on display in institutions that don't charge an entrance fee because these are supposed to be the public's artifacts. We also do virtual programs. We have wonderful, made these great 3D models that are of research quality of high demand items. And as researchers do request it, and if they can't come here and get physical access, which we're always very accommodating to, we loan out a lot of our artifacts also to institutions. The University of West Florida has a huge collection, and if that ever came back right now, we would actually be out of space.
Yeah.
But, and then also, great 3D models that are of investigative. You can actually do measurements on those types of models. We are very, very active. Even stuff that's in the vault that people may feel is vaultish and just locked up, a lot of that stuff is on display. Tampa Bay History Museum has a really wonderful display of 1715 plate fleet. Also, there's many books that are going out right now. We're getting ready to send out another loan. It's a very, very active program, so we're very actively involved with that. But potentially one of the things with this new facility would be an interesting sort of window into our conservation lab, because that's not something people normally get to see.
Oh, no,
especially with the chemicals and everything that's going on with that.
one of the cool things you get to do here is go to see the conservation lab, and it's very, very cool.
So we're thinking kind of like
I also say the 4th floor up there,
Right.
the 5th floor, which is, you really have to know somebody to get into that place.
Right.
Get more of that stuff out to the
Right.
public, and I would also argue, I would be okay with sending, my own personal opinion is if we get things out to, places that charge admissions, I'm okay with. I understand the thought process,
that do
but,
that too. Oh, yeah.
people really love their history where they can see it and they can touch it and they can experience it, as opposed to, it's sitting in a warehouse like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah, which it definitely does not. And actually, it's a very, very active loan program. And if we actually get a chance, maybe at this next meeting, I would love to give you a tour of our collection facility. We can show you the map of all the areas that have places on loan. You can talk to our loans coordinator, Marie Prentice, and just also, just show you some of the great stuff that we have.
May I make a suggestion along those lines with respect to legislators? They are always looking for interesting things to put in their home offices. And if there would be some way to attach a significant historical event or historical property or whatever that is actually in their district, and that could be something that could be highlighted in their district offices in some small way, just a little exhibit. But it would also put historic preservation in front of legislators every time they walk in their office.
In their public office?
Yeah.
District office.
Their district offices, right.
Yeah.
So, John, are you volunteering to hold a very large silver bar in the Florida Senate Rules Office?
Well, I would be if I were still there, but
Okay.
But I'm not suggesting anything of great value.
You'll always be there, John.
But I think something that drew attention to the significant historical events or properties in that particular member's district, even if it's just a fold out exhibit that's on somebody's tabletop, would be a real advantage for the program, because it would show people that the legislator is interested in history, and the legislator would be reminded of it every time they walk in their office, and you could recycle this stuff every so often. Just a thought.
I think that's a
Yeah.
brilliant suggestion, and I hope it goes forward.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that more, John. I would be very interested in that.
And the Capitol offices as well, we've sort of tossed that around.
Yeah, the Capitol
We'd
offices.
love to do that too.
Yeah, we did have some moving exhibits at the Capitol.
If anybody'd like an anchor in their office.
Well, let's move the agenda along a little bit here.
We can help you, right?
Large objects, we need a place to put.
Thank you very much. And you can tell we're very interested and are concerned about helping you and moving forward. But let us move on the agenda and hear about the Capitol Complex legislation update from our DMS representatives. And thank you for your patience with our discussions.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. My name is, again, Ryan Meikenhouse. I'm the Bureau Chief of Property Services with the Department of Management Services and the Division of Real Estate Development and Management. And I oversee the coordination of the monuments and memorials at the Capitol Complex that has been enacted through legislation over the past several years. Will this work for me up here? You want me to ask? Oh, great. Thanks. First slide. So today, specifically, we want to start with the legislation update. Previous to this fiscal year, the monuments and memorials at the Capitol had to be approved by the Florida Historical Commission and the Department of Management Services before being put on site. But with the new legislation change, there are certain officers or designees that we now have to get approval from. So we have to work in conjunction, the Department of Management Services with the Florida Historical Commission to approve or recommend certain monuments and memorials, and then DMS has to coordinate those efforts through the officers and or their designees, which has been determined at this time. We are aware of the individuals who we need to make contact with, but this meeting is that first step to sort of move toward that approval process for upcoming memorials and monuments. Next slide. So the Capitol Complex Improvement Project began back in 2014, where the legislature began funding larger projects there on the Capitol Complex, including Waller Park, the House and the Senate garages. Waller Park was starting to design or funded back in 2014. Construction began this past year due to the Senate garage needing to be closed immediately back in 2016 for emergency repairs. That project has completed, and as mentioned by Steve, the House garage is finishing up some waterproofing on the very top. Both garages have been shored up and completed, but the final completion on the House should be done this fall. Waller Park is now in design, and it should be occurring over the next few years. And this was all in a grand vision to update the Capitol Complex for both safety and the visitors of the state and citizens of Florida visiting the Capitol.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
What, when it's all said and done, Waller Park's done, both garages are done, what will the total cost have been?
That would be a question, I guess, more specifically for the Bureau of Building Construction. So they have those specific numbers. I know the appropriations have come in over multiple years, but I can get that information back to you if you'd like.
You have a ballpark? You've got to have a ballpark.
About $100 million.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Next slide, please. So approximately 1 year ago, in January, a site was developed, site zoning for monuments and memorials. So on both the House and the Senate side, there's public open space, as well as the Capitol Courtyard and Waller Park. That'll be for people during session and other times of the year to congregate, to have events, to meet people, to traverse the grounds. And then on either side, on north and south of the House and Senate garages, that's the original memorial space. So the idea was to start the memorials on the outside to allow proper egress for people visiting the Capitol. And over the years, if and when more memorials and monuments are appropriated and or determined to be on the Capitol grounds, they would push into that open public space on the Senate and House side. But that is to be determined in the coming years as more and more monuments and memorials are approved. Next slide. So there are structural considerations to be had there at the Capitol, both as Steve said earlier, both the house and the Senate garage are underground. And a lot of those improvements were done because of the oak tree sitting on top of them, planted 50 years ago, that had to be excavated. So those are considerations by the department moving forward about the weight and size of some of these memorials. And so we do have general guidelines for weight distribution for different memorials, but until a memorial is defined and specified by the artist or an artist, we won't know definitively what engineering needs might be necessary to hold up the monument memorial over the garage. So currently on the outsides where the memorials are going in, there's considerations to that, but if and when they move into that more public space, which is on grade, those considerations won't have to be made because it's dirt underground, it's not a garage. Next slide. So now going to the, I guess, overview of the memorials that are currently in progress or recently completed. So what we're here for today is to specifically discuss the Holocaust and Slavery Memorial, which are currently going through design and scope. The fabrication is in process for the Dozier Memorial at both the Mariana location and the Capitol Complex. And recently completed were the POW MIA bracelets and chair, which were dedicated in September 21 and April 22 respectively. Next slide. And so here you'll see the two designs that have been recommended by the committees of each the Holocaust and Slavery Memorials. The artists had been selected some years ago. We received design proposals and committee feedback. And now we're sort of moving towards implementing House Bill 5301, which includes those members that we have to get approval from. So currently, this is where we stand. On the left, you'll see the Holocaust Memorial proposal, and on the right, the Slavery Memorial proposal. In general, the Holocaust Memorial proposal is approximately 14 feet tall, weighing some few thousand pounds. Those specifics are yet to be defined because they are still finishing up some specific designing at the end based on supplies, materials, different things that COVID has affected. And the Slavery Memorial proposal, those figurines are about life-size forms, so it'll be about 15 or so feet wide and deep. It's pretty circular, so it'll be contained within about a 15 by 15 or so area. Yes, sir.
At one point in time, this was a couple years ago, those were supposedly scheduled to go where the Senate office building is behind that. Is that not on the space that actually is the garage area, but on closer toward more Monroe? Is that still the current thinking, or has that been moved?
Great question. Can I show you on the next two slides? Sure. So next slide, please. So the Holocaust proposed location is here on the house side, again, in that memorial area closer to Monroe. Here's Jefferson. So that's the proposed location. That, again, is due to, the path of people walking and trying to traverse the different plazas. And next slide, if you don't mind. The proposed location for the Slavery Memorial is there on the Senate side. And as you could probably tell, the Senate side has both a lower and an upper level for the plaza. This would be presented on the upper plaza, again, in that nearing the public space so people would be able to go through and see the artwork. Last slide. And so today, really, the conversation, I think, is going to surround around our ability to propose these pieces of artwork to then move to the next step with the different individuals who have been named for the final approval. We wanted to get your thoughts on both designs. I understand if you need more additional information, time, screenshots, but this is, again, to begin that conversation. If and when we come to a consensus about those designs that have been proposed, we will be willing to reach out to the individuals to seek that approval. If a design recommendation is rejected, DMS will then go back and work with the selection committee and the artist to determine next steps based on the rejection criteria of those members for the approval process beyond us and the Florida Historical Commission. So was there any questions related to the design or any additional information you all would like and maybe an email to review after this meeting?
Well, I mean, I can just speak for my own, personally, I've seen some of these projects, in the last couple of years. I personally would like to see what you got. I'm at the point in time where, unsure if we can actually get to what the original goal was, to have everything kind of a similar construction material and look to it. That was at one point in time, but, I would like to see, personally, a lot more information. And then I would be more than happy to move the project forward, because I think both of those have both been funded, if I'm not incorrect.
They have.
Let's actually start making some, turning some dirt.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I will provide that additional information to the entire, commission here, for further discussion. And once we receive that feedback, if it is again unanimous, we can then forward along. If not, we can have these discussions again. Another thing for discussion today was how, the commission deems this process to be moving forward. So because we have to ultimately send it to these other individuals for final approval, we wanted to make sure that we were, using your time best, and didn't know if you all would like to meet quarterly at these type of meetings for us to present any proposed designs on future monuments, or if you'd like an email or some other secondary meeting at your convenience.
Would you give us a timeline in terms of the steps through which this process goes for each of the memorials that we have before us today, and any future memorials? Where does it start? What review committee is appointed? Where does it go after that review committee presents its proposals? Does it come to the commission at that point, then go to these respective cabinet officers?
Yeah, so in general, a timeline would be the legislature appropriates the funds and or the need for that memorial. And if they determine a select committee to be determined and aggregated, DMS will work to do that. After that committee convenes and receives proposals from artists, they would then select that artist to then receive a proposal for what they determine to be the proposed memorial. From there, the artwork would then come before DMS and the Florida Historical Commission, and then again from there it goes to these individuals for final approval. Some of the delays for these projects have specifically been related to the construction of the Capitol complex. So the funding had been there, or the legislation has passed some years ago. The funding came a few years later, and the projects at the Capitol, due to the need for the renovations, the space was not made available. And then also COVID added a little layer of delay to that. We do not expect future memorials to take this long. I think the kinks have been worked out in terms of making these committees to find the artist, have the artist design it, and then to get to this process. And we're trying to condense those timelines as well, which is why I wanted to sort of try to talk about how we could, further these discussions in the future to make sure that we're being cognizant of the timelines and the budgets related to these monuments and memorials.
I can only speak for myself, but I don't think any of us want to be the one holding things up. So I think here's the approval process, so that we're not the ones you're waiting for a quarterly meeting that may be 2 months away.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah,
Before you can go to the.
I mean, my own personal opinion, and we'll follow the chair's instructions, but, if you have a design process that you are ready to go for, if you can give staff and some heads up, I'll be more than willing to attend a special meeting or a special Zoom or not. Frankly, some of these things have been around for far too long, and we're not even really discussing the two memorials that have never been funded but are still on the books.
Yes.
So, in the way to move things along faster, and I understand the government doesn't always move that, quickly, I would say whatever we can do to push this thing forward would be most appreciative, at least on my part.
Okay.
This is Dr. Cliff Smith. Could I recommend that you would send a package out to our commission members in advance, so that when we come to this meeting, we're informed, and so this might eliminate a lot of our questions or might produce new questions.
Yes, I'll do that moving forward. So for this package here, I'll send specific renderings of the slavery and the Holocaust memorials for discussion. And then we can set up a secondary meeting, if you all would like, outside of the quarterly meeting, to ensure that all consensus is brought together before forwarding it to that group, downtown. And on future memorials, I can provide that information prior to any meetings to ensure that you all have documentation and have any questions ready when we get to the meeting.
What should our perspective be when we review these? I mean, I'm not an artist.
And what, more specifically, so let's say Tony doesn't like something.
Right.
What, do we have the ability to change things? I suspect not, but I don't really,
That's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
What if we have a problem that some of us feel that a wrong message is being communicated?
I don't think that's a bad, thought to have. I think it produces discussion because the legislation asks for both DMS and the Florida Historical Commission to weigh in and ensure that we recommend it. So I think that we're recommending it from the business side to say, is this appropriate for the space, the location, how it might work, in terms of other needs or structural elements.
Well, those are sort of technicalities. They're not what is being communicated.
I say that's what we need us for.
Right?
Correct.
Right. There are a lot of different opinions on looking back at our history right now, and there are a lot of ways to talk about it and to communicate it. And I'm not
and I
saying
personally
we
don't want to
will.
be on Fox News. Okay,
Well,
so,
To that point, I think along with renderings, I'd like to see, why an artist, and I'm new, maybe this has been done before.
No, we haven't done
But
that.
if there's why an artist chose the design, in their words, and what words go along with the design, I can look at a picture, but if there's a plaque in front of the,
Text would be important.
so that's just as important to me.
Yeah, so the verbiage isn't always readily available on the front end, so it's what I've seen in my experience, over the past year plus with these memorials, is that, the artwork is sort of the focal point, and then that language comes afterwards. Sometimes the artists produce it, and the state would look at it just to make sure it's correct, but I think that's the context in which the legislation is asking for assistance in terms of if there's something is really off or not contextually correct. Or absent, absolutely.
That's right.
I do have a question. In my day job, I deal with a lot of procedure, so I'm just trying to get an understanding. Are you looking for the commission to take formal action on these, or are you just looking for comments from us?
So the legislation only asks for your approval for a piece of artwork.
So we have to approve it.
That's formal action of the commission. Which is,
It may be,
well, could you clarify that next time? Are you looking for us, do we need to take a vote on this at some point? Is that to be queued up for commission action, or is this just something where you're looking for feedback from the members of the commission? There's a big difference.
Right, there's a big difference.
Big difference in terms of your chances of being on Fox News. I've already had the back of my head on CNN.
dude, I understand that, and frankly, there was a James Call article about all of this at one point in time, and, my experience with James Call is, sometimes it's great, and sometimes it can be difficult.
I just wanted to let you guys know you all have a copy of the legislation.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a look at it.
Right,
Yeah, it
right.
seems to require recommendations from the commission.
That sounds like formal action.
Right. Yes, in the,
Right.
recommendations previously before the law for the commission to make recommendations to DMS, now it's for the commission to make recommendations to the presiding officers and cabinet. It sounds to me like you're waiting on us to say, yes, just go ahead with these things, right?
yeah, I think we're at that point, where we've reviewed the artwork, and with relation to the slavery and the Holocaust memorial, I think that's the next step, and that's what we wanted to discuss today, in order to discuss what the commission required for that either recommendation or not recommendation.
I would also recommend to you that, whether this is, decide to do this or not, in a perfect world, if you could actually get us on a Zoom call with the artist and/or a representative of the committee that put that together, so we can kind of get what their vision is and make sure that it aligns with the And like I said, I mean, I don't think you have to wait quarterly. I mean, unless staff is really opposed to that, and I will back the staff play,
We had
but,
special meetings.
Yeah, we have special category grants coming up, so we need to take into consideration, there's a lot of work coming
That's
our
right,
way
there's a lot of work
in the
coming
next
up.
couple months. So, the question that's raised before about the timeline, I think is a good one. Because I don't want us to be the ones holding this up
Right,
either.
right.
So, we do need to figure out, let's go ahead and get everything that everyone's asking for to the members so they can be queued up for action either at a special meeting or at a quarterly meeting, but preferably after special category grants are done, would be my.
Yeah,
special category is what,
Next month.
less than a month away?
September
Yeah.
28th,
End of the month.
29th. But you'll be scoring them and reviewing
Yeah.
them a month ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
So, in September.
Another question on monuments. So aside from these two, are there things in the pipeline, or after this, absent statutory action, there's nothing in the pipeline?
So I believe, as Steve was saying earlier, there are a couple that are sort of on the books, that I believe discussion has been had on. I believe, something related to women's rights and or suffrage or another, veterans memorial, but I think it's a little larger than some of the other ones. So I think those are the two sort of on the back burner currently, but I've not seen any formal legislation funding those.
Okay. So anything you provide, will you maybe do a couple bullets on those and say,
Absolutely.
the two that have been passed but not funded are this and this? and
Sure.
With the statutory language that passed?
I can do that.
think one was on the memorial for the men that fell in the Beirut bombing, at the barracks many, many years ago.
Yeah.
And then there was one other that I'm lost at.
But nothing that beyond these two that's gonna require any action?
Not currently, no, sir. No.
All right, now, you waiting on us for these two?
So after I provide that information, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we got to a place
Judy,
where we
could-
knew that this legislation, go ahead.
Yeah, John.
Judy, I was going to suggest, I think there's some ambiguity, there's some uncertainty on the part of the commission about our role and what we are actually being asked to assess. And I think it would be helpful, at least for me, if the staff might draft a suggested series of guidelines, which might be applied to the review process. And that once we agreed on the guidelines, we'd be thinking about the same things when we made our decision about each proposal.
Right. I think one thing that is important, John, is that we get an understanding of what the committee wanted when they put out their their call for proposals, for the monument itself. I know
Yes.
there's language, and that would help me. In my opinion, does this artwork meet what they wanted to communicate?
There's administrative rules that accompany any of this process.
Not to my knowledge, only statute.
That's why I'm thinking we might want to think about a rule. Otherwise,
You don't wanna go through the rulemaking process. We will never get this done.
That'd be a lot.
Right, I mean, there are some things that staff believes that, we really need to kind of keep an eye on. I would highly recommend, but I'm not in the rule formation process.
The question was whether there's a rule that can give them some guidance on what our role is in it. So they
Yeah,
don't
you
Well, I
don't
mean,
necessarily.
if I can get, Secretary of State's, general counsel, I mean, you're general counsel for.
I'm counsel for this commission.
Well, I understand that.
It's EMS rule, not a Department of State rule, probably. I'm not suggesting that happen, I'm wondering if there was one.
Okay.
All right, so what we need is clarification from you in terms of background, timeline, things like that. And we need from the staff some sort of guidelines, I think that would help us. And the one thing that we'd like to see included is the initial committee's request for proposals. What did they want?
I can do that.
Yeah.
Could I make one additional suggestion?
Sure.
That in the paperwork provided to us is what is specifically our task in this? What is our role in this? What are we supposed to be achieving? Are we approving the art? or are we approving, what exactly is our approval
Yeah.
for?
Sign in place.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was getting at too.
Because I suspect you'll go, getting through us will be easy. Getting through, maybe the new or current, Commissioner of Agriculture may be a whole different animal. And I suspect, for your process and those guys over there are gonna have to work this, final, like, oh, this is what it's gonna say, and,
Well, Tony just pointed out to me that the commission shall provide in the statute, recommendations, and, on the design and placement. That's it, that's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's fine to find the
Recommendations
statute.
for design and placement.
I apologize for interrupting you. It's fine to just mind the language of the statute, just as
Right,
the decision to queue up for us.
Right.
There's no need to interpret it or add to it. It just needs to be queued up for us to make a decision.
right.
Perfect.
With
We can,
whatever information my colleagues
Mhm.
have asked for, so we can take a vote and move it along.
we can do that.
Would you like an additional meeting to do that, or?
I think when we're ready, after we've been provided information that we requested, then we could have a special meeting.
Yeah.
Just make it Zoom and have all the information, have Brian here, available to answer any questions, and, then we can, make our recommendations.
But for me personally, I think I would really like to either hear the artist's vision and/or the people that actually came up with the design process.
Right,
Because
right.
those people had discussions at one point in
Right.
time that we are not a part of.
Yep.
And I wanna respect that, whatever that process was, and, maybe they're seeing things that I would not see.
I'll be the one fabricating it, so.
Right.
Right. And art is quite subtle, and yet sometimes it's quite blatant, so, it's important.
Okay. Well, I will provide that information as soon as I can, and, thank you all for your
Yeah.
time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, the next item on our agenda are dates for our upcoming meetings. So, we know that on September, what is it, Andy?
28th and 29th.
Right, 28th and 29th, we are going to meet and review all the applications.
Yes, and that will be, everything we're gonna do like last year, both in person and a webinar option, ideally, we like all of our FHD commissioners to attend, but if there's a conflict or they're unable to do that, we will have a webinar option, which is what we did last year, with the FHD as well, so.
Well, I'd really like to request in person this time. It's best for us, there are things that come up in our discussions, and they're much easier when we're in face-to-face. Just as chairman, I would like to strongly encourage, the commissioners to attend, this, two-day meeting in person. We have been talking about maybe having a little reception, in the evening between, the days. I don't know what that is, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. We used to have a nice one, and invite an invitation really for the applicant to have a chance to talk to us, off the, I don't want to say off the record, but a chance to just chat with us about things. And, we used to do that a long time ago, and it was very popular. And, Director Lotane and I are going to talk about how we can pull that off. Nothing too fancy, but right here in the Gray Building, with all the commissioners, attending and available for questions, and on both sides, our questions of them and their questions of us. Or just to do a little face-to-face, how are you? Nice to see you.
But to be clear, we are not going down the road that what we went through with the African American History Grant process.
In what way?
We are not doing anything that we did
Oh, we're
on
not
that.
changing the format, if that's.
Okay, I just wanna make sure that we,
Oh, right.
because I thought the cultural affairs format had some flaws.
That's still being discussed, like, we're still having some internal discussions on that, but yes, you'll be doing your regular.
Okay, well, I
It's okay, Steve. That's gonna change.
okay,
You're
I
gonna
will,
debrief on that, but
okay.
you're.
I am not gonna go through that experience again.
Currently, there are no plans to change our normal agenda and process.
Okay.
Special category, Alyssa's correct, there is a debrief that all the divisions that do grants are having, later this month to talk about, like, public meetings. So I don't anticipate a major change, but we'll find out.
Okay.
We've already put our agenda through for approval, so it was approved as it always is, but, can never make promises, I guess.
Because, I mean, for those of you that weren't a part of that, the last day was nasty and not positive.
I'm sorry.
To say something else about the meeting. Well, I'm gonna speak about when I give my remarks in a little bit, I'm gonna talk about just the format of
Right.
that, so we can.
Well, let's talk a little bit about more upcoming meetings after September. I don't know what they are. I've got one in November. Brief us on what's already set up.
The National Register meeting is the first Thursday in November, unless you guys think that yesterday.
The what meeting is?
The National Register.
No, we're on that day. Right.
Okay, and then, so we have scheduled a
Veterans Day.
the next day, Friday, but it's Veterans Day, so I'm gonna send out a poll to the commissioner, I guess, things by date, and I think for Ruben, is best to leave the National Register meeting where it's scheduled because of all his deadlines for doing property notifications and everything.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything. What dates are you talking about?
The National Register Day, Sarah's getting a microphone.
I forgot to move the microphone back over to my table because I gave it to DMS. The National Register meeting is scheduled for the first Thursday in November. We don't want to move that meeting because of Ruben's notifications that he has to do to property owners.
I think it's actually the 10th. It's the
Is it
10th.
It's the 10th.
Okay, it's the 10th.
Yeah.
Did he already move it?
It was on my calendar for this
Okay.
date all along. I'm not sure why. but-
Whatever the National Register date is, it's
It is
staying
the
where it
10th
is.
of November currently.
But the Friday after is Veterans Day, so this is gonna be one of those rare occurrences
Yeah.
where the FHB meeting and the NR meeting are not back to back like we usually do them. So I'm gonna send out a poll to the commissioners, to determine what date, would be best for the business meeting, but it will, be in November also. I mean, I don't see why we can't find a date in November.
Well, right, we also could meet the Wednesday before. I mean, it's not
Or
going
the
to kill
morning
us.
before,
Or
or
the morning.
possibly.
Well, Tony just asked me, could we do both on the same day? And I, of course, said no, but then I'm thinking about it. Usually they are at different times of the day, and the register is in the afternoon and we're in the morning. We could do that on the same day if we didn't have a big agenda, which we probably won't after special categories is over.
This is Michael Francis, Judy. If I could just add something, I teach two
Sure.
classes. I teach two classes on Wednesdays, and so I'll find a way to
Can't do that.
deal with the class on September the 28th so that I can be there in person. But I'd rather not miss two Wednesdays this semester. If it's possible to move that second meeting to a Friday, that would be great.
Yeah, and it might be Friday the 18th, a week after, a week later. Michael, I do, as a longtime university faculty member, I get it. You don't want to cancel too many. So I'm sure that Sarah will have that as an option.
Sure.
When you do what do you call it, a doodle?
A doodle poll.
Doodle poll, which is really easy.
Yep.
And that's something to keep in mind. And I get it, Michael. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
What about if they were on, well, I don't need to do this, but also have the option, Sarah,
For Thursday morning.
for Thursday morning, right? And we could start it early. We could start it at 8:30 instead of 9:30, so you wouldn't run into 1:30 start.
I was about to say, that, but Alyssa's gotta be there now. That's gonna be difficult.
Right,
Make it happen.
right.
But none of us are morning people, so yes, I will bring some coffee.
Right. Yeah, I almost brought some this morning, but
We don't have the cafe downstairs anymore.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I
all
think
right,
the
so,
10th is your best bet, Thursday morning.
Yeah, I do too. And, Michael, you don't teach on Thursday, right?
I do not teach on Thursday, so that works perfectly for me.
Oh, good, maybe that, we are, you had
There
the
we go, we
solution that I
doodled.
thought was nuts, and now it's right. That's great. Good. Okay, so we're going to solve the November meeting, in upcoming. So, thank you. Anything else on upcoming meetings? Good. Now, our committee reports, our bureau reports, Katie Miar, why don't you bring us up to date on archaeology?
I'd be happy to. And then if any of those meetings end up being at Mission San Luis, I'd love to schedule, again, a tour of our collection facility, which is right on that property, and you can see where the footprint of the new building is gonna go.
Right.
And we should hopefully have more information about that, because it should be out to bid.
Before and after?
Yeah, yeah. So yes, I'll just talk about, I'll be brief, so you guys don't keep you too long, just some highlights of our programs. Our staff is performing at the highest level. They're very, very busy. Just to talk about a little bit of what I do besides, being bureau chief, I'm also the state archaeologist, and part of my responsibilities with that is handling human remains cases across the state of Florida, whether it's on private lands or state lands, that are greater than 75 years deceased. And since I've started in this position, I've been handling human remains cases even before I was the state archaeologist. I did it on behalf of the state archaeologist. I average about 90 new cases a year across, and that's to respond to, and sometimes these cases are prolonged if they're phase 3 construction work that goes on for many, many years, and it is pretty daunting with the amount of development that's happening across the state, and also more awareness. And but I work, if they're Native American remains, I work very closely with tribal nations to determine repatriation and reburial, and the same thing with other descendant communities. Work with law enforcement, medical examiners' offices, and a lot of CRM firms. So, but yeah, it's pretty ramped up, and we just submitted our things, and last year it was 91 for the last fiscal year, 91 new cases. We also work very closely, and another thing I've been doing this year is working very closely in the nature of a lot of our collections with the state. We have these legacy collections from many, many years ago, and they used to be housed in different universities besides before we had a collections facility. And University of Florida State University, as well as University of Florida Museum of Natural History, have portions of our collections, and some of these collections will become split over time, and that becomes problematic when you have human remains collections. And so that's something we've been working on. University of Florida received a grant to look at all of their Native American human remains collections, and we in turn have been looking to see what we have that may be part of that, and regards to funerary objects and other things. So that's been an ongoing thing, but a very great collaborative effort between the agencies, and it's really benefiting the tribal nations, so they don't have to consult with 3 different agencies on the same collection. So we've already gotten an update on the building, and hopefully next time we will talk more about that, and I'll have a little more specs as to how that's going to look. One of the things we are talking about is having that viewing room, like I was saying, to look at the conservation lab. Kind of similar, I don't know if you've ever been to the University of Florida's museum that has the butterfly room where you can see the entomologists working.
Right.
So you can actually walk by, you can see our conservation lab and our conservators working on those sites. A really quick staffing update. So we're currently pretty low staff across the board a bit. We're trying to hire 3 underwater archaeologists, 1 new terrestrial archaeologist, 1 conservator. A lot of them, of course, stem from the same thing we've been talking about, is just the not competitive salaries that we kind of unfortunately lose people for that. But hopefully we will be able to get back stepped up with that, as well as a clerk position we're going to be hiring out soon. So besides the building, another big update is, and that we are also just so grateful for, is that the legislators have funded our trucks to replace our 3 fuel vehicles, that each one of which was 20 years old, with I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of miles that have been MacGyvered together for the last 20 years, and were just not safe and barely ran. So we're finally getting 3 trucks, and that's been quite a process, but everybody is very excited about that. I think that's the happiest thing that's happened to our archaeologists lately. We're also got budget authority permission at this last legislative session to purchase a research vessel for our underwater archaeology team, but through a federally, it's a NOAA grant that they had received, mostly to train law enforcement officers in underwater protection and identification and procurement of our resources across the state of Florida. A lot of agencies, FWC, local sheriff's offices, various groups have been reaching out to our underwater staff to get training on how to better assist with cultural resource protection. And one of the best ways to do that is have these trainings and actually get them down there, dive, see underwater archaeologists at work, show the difference between, illicit looting as well and archaeological work, and also give them better understanding of how to identify some of these sites underwater because they're not very clear. And as Judy was saying earlier, some of these things, it just looks like concretions, but truly it's it's a rapier, or it's something else. Yeah, it's very deceiving. If you don't have the proper eye, then you might not know it's even there. So, so part of this boat procurement was to be able to take law enforcement out, and again, it's funded through a federally funded grant. We just needed to get budget authority to actually use the federal funds, but we did. So that's wonderful. So they are also very excited about that. And going back into collections and conservation, so they've been very busy with the moving all those artifacts out of the Florida Museum, making plans for that. Also, our conservation lab will be closed down as well because that's part of the mitigation process down there. We've had a huge problem with water in our conservation lab with iron rust coming in, including out of the eye wash station, which was pretty horrifying. But so I'm glad they're doing this mitigation, but it's still going to take a lot of people's time and effort to get that stuff moved.
And it is separate than the plaza, sorry, Katie, it is separate than the plaza, but it's happening kind of concurrently.
Simultaneously.
The whole ground floor is
So,
being
so
closed for a
besides
while.
new building construction, it's also old building mitigation, and
Right.
And we're also getting, part of another thing is fire suppression, as Alyssa said, in our existing collections facility, which withstands fire suppression, which I still blows my mind that they would even build
Without.
Right. Yeah, apparently it was purposeful, but,
Value engineering, I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, it's really expensive, but you gotta do it.
I know, it's just, so we're finally getting that, and, so that should be at least up to some more standards.
Even do it.
Yeah. How is that even legal?
I know.
I don't understand.
Well, there's fewer staff, maybe they just thought there weren't as many staff at the building.
I would also think it was probably at a different time.
That's what I'm
It
thinking.
was.
Well, that building was
It must
built
be.
not that many years ago.
Well, it was
15 years ago.
72 when the building was built, I think, wasn't it?
No, we're talking about the collections facility at.
Yeah,
at the
sorry,
college, it's
sorry,
more
right.
recently.
Yeah,
2000.
At the mission.
2004.
I don't know, early 2000.
yeah.
Boggles the mind.
Well, I mean, one of the buildings did burn. So,
I know, I know,
You know.
on that property, right?
Right. It wasn't like we didn't know that it could occur.
I know, I agree.
I forgot that.
Right.
But thank goodness it's getting remedied now, and I can sleep at night. Finally, knowing that that's happening. But then also our collections conservation staff, as statutorily is required, and they do it, they're just so efficient, but they've done, their audits, all their annual audits of our collections, both at the collections lab, and then in the vault, they do 100% audit every year, and they just completed all of that. And, I've never worked at a place where people know exactly where everything is. It's just incredible. I've worked at museums and the National Park Service, and nobody knows where anything is except for here. They always know where everything is, and it's just really, really incredible.
It's been an issue many times. I wanna go see that gold, and I wanna see it now.
Oh, and if we could show exactly where
Right.
it is. Yeah, pull out the chart. Yeah, and then, if I get to take you guys down at some point to the conservation lab, whether it's this time or another time, I'd love to show you some of the work. They've been really working hard on getting things completed, out on exhibit. A bunch of canoes just got completed, a bunch of cannons, some, even a coffin, and some various other things that are all going out on exhibit at various visitor centers, from the parks in which they came from. Another thing, just to really talk briefly, is, so I mentioned MKO, the Minnesota Key Offshore. They're finishing up as part of their Shifting Shorelines grant. Underwater received a number of grants, and one of them is to process sample sediment from from Minnesota Key Offshore. They're doing that to look at paleo-environmental transgression. They're looking at, the pollen and the different, what can you find in there. So that's getting sampled, that's getting sent off to Brown University, to specialists up there in the process of doing that now. And that should really tell us about site transition and what happened with that site over the years. And I can go into more about that underwater exposure later. And then, really quickly to talk about our public lands program. So, our supervisor of that program, Dr. Paulette McFadden, runs the Archaeological Resource Management Training, which is the ARM training that teaches participants how to navigate the compliance and review process, how to identify sites on their lands. It's geared towards land management, but she's lately also been doing quite a bit of training geared towards law enforcement, and she's been providing, they implemented a supplemental refresher training that happens every 5 years after you get those courses that you're trained up on how to do it. And she's providing it virtually and online, which has been really beneficial for law enforcement since it's hard for them to really get the same scheduling out. You know, they're just really busy, and so this has been very helpful for them, and she's gotten quite a number of participants up there, and she's gotten our participant levels ramped up. But that's it for the highlights. I'd be happy to talk about more after the meeting if you want to.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you're making progress on the trucks, on the curation issue. I mean, that has been just a thorn in everybody's side, and it looks
It's a game
bad.
changer.
It is
Yeah.
bad. It's one area that archaeologists, the last closet to clean up or something like that. And, I'm really glad to see that you're gonna be the example, you know?
Yeah, I'm
Right, I mean, Mission San Luis is a good example on many different levels.
right.
And, I think that putting the curation facility there to begin with was really bright.
Mm-hmm.
It beats the shopping center.
Which is now torn down. Yeah, it's not even there anymore.
It's gonna be the Tallahassee Police Department, it's gonna be on.
I mean, I saw it and it was okay, but the fact that it was where it was the problem. But to bring it to Mission San Luis was really a good idea.
I agree.
Yeah.
Where was it supposed to be?
Every time the collections were moved out to Northwood Center.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, okay.
Talk about that problem, they also had that.
Back world, right, yeah, okay.
And, it was secure, I didn't have any problem with that.
Nice setup, but yeah, it's been a lot of moving.
It was in that old
public,
Right,
Yeah.
and that is one heck of a collection to move, and it was moved. Okay, I didn't hear any of our stories.
3.5 million artifacts.
Yeah, and Dave Dickel, shared it up.
Yeah, I thought that Dave ended his, he wanted to retire after that, yeah.
But the fact that it is where it is now at Mission San Luis, it is a permanent home,
Yeah.
which is something that is very important. It's kind of like university, when you get something on the university campus, they almost have to take care of it.
Exactly.
You know, it may not be great, but it's not gonna go anywhere else. I'm not gonna say we haven't had to, at the University of West Florida, rent space for our collections, for part of the collections for a period of time. That does happen.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, now those 3 procurements it's a game changer for us,
It is, that's great. Good. Thank you, Katie.
I think.
So now we've heard the historic preservation, report. Thank you. But let's go to the grants program with you, Angie.
Yep, this is, I think, everyone's favorite update, prepping for the meeting, but, just to remind everyone on the budget, I know we keep talking about it, that the, grant categories were fully funded, so just to give you, that means for the grant staff, who, by the way, I'll just put a plug in, I did submit an LBR request for additional FTE staff and grants, because we are super busy right now. Hopefully that makes it out of the department, but we'll see. So the small matching list that was fully funded, that will fund 46 projects for the small matching program for $1.6 million around the state. And those projects are, we no longer do construction projects through small matching, so those are surveys, which Alyssa talked about, National Register nominations, education projects, and those are up to $50,000. And for special category this year, the full funding is going to fund 77 projects for $21 million around the state. We also did end up, after the governor vetoes, with 6 member projects, the line item appropriations for another $6 million in the fixed capital outlay grant line. Those are around the state. There's Bay of Pigs Museum and Library, Coral Gables restoration of the historic gondola building, Dade City Women's Club, historic building restoration, the Harry Truman Little White House, exterior hardening and interior restoration project, West Louisville Education Center, and the renovation of Old Stanton High School. So those are additional projects that were funded outside of the grant application process.
Is that a high number or an average number?
It depends on the appetite. So there are actually.
I would say high.
It is high.
My experience with that's high.
The legislature actually included, I think, 10 to 12 projects. The governor vetoed maybe 4 or 5.
I see.
This is more than, I think we had maybe 1 or 2, in the last few years. We
That's what I
usually have
thought.
1 or 2, so this
Well,
is high, yeah.
It might be a, result of, lack of special category grant funding, that if that was going away, then they go back to the old system of terms
Right.
of special member projects, right? I hope it's when the pendulum
Yeah.
swings back.
I mean, it's always better, also, I will say a lot of these, the request amount they're asking for, all the 2 of them that I just listed is over our 500,000 project limit for special categories. So
Right.
sometimes they probably submit these requests, because they want to get a project accomplished through one grant and not have to do multiples, but,
I have a question about that. Just historically, I'm assuming the $500,000 number is statutory.
I don't think it's in statute, it's
It
in
used to
our
be
rule,
350,
administrative rule.
And we
Yeah.
increased it a few years ago, when
Okay.
we did the rule, just because we saw a lot of people coming back repeatedly for those
So it's been
projects.
increased recently?
In the last 10 years, I don't know if it's been really.
With the cost of construction materials, preservation, restoration,
You may wanna look at,
and it prevents someone from having to do a grant application process for year after year after year. If we can get the project done by bumping that to $1 million now, that we've cleared the deck too from last session.
That's something we can look at. That's in administrative rules, so they would have to wait until our next rule, update, which will be
that's
later this year. So
6
if we
months or a
were
year
to do
process.
that, it would not go into effect until fiscal '25.
Well,
But
changing it.
it's something we can definitely look at, you're right.
we could bump it up to
Yeah.
700.
Yeah, and we will,
Dollar doesn't go
okay,
as
here's
far.
the other issue. We
Right.
do require, there is a match requirement, so that also limits how much we could ask, they could ask
Well,
for, even
sure.
if we increased
So
it.
that's not our problem.
Right, you're right.
I guess the other thought too is by increasing the amount, you might decrease the number of projects.
Yes.
So there has been some complaints from those folks that have those $50,000 construction projects, that now we've rolled those into the process, that they don't feel like they're quite getting.
Well.
So those are always ranked high. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
what I would say to the commission when you're reviewing them, don't look at a dollar amount so much as like the quality of the project that's being proposed, because we do, every year, the commission does rank highly, projects that are well under 500,000, so,
Sure.
We will also, the Chautauqua phase,
yeah, you're right. There were
4 now,
quite a
phase
few
3,
that come back,
you know.
for multiple, phases, yeah.
And it's not saying it's not a worthwhile project.
Right.
I mean, especially under Broxton, I suspect it will be Chautauqua phase 7 or whatever it is.
Who knows? It's always nice when the application title is such and such, final phase, or
Yeah.
something. They'll actually put that in their title, final phase,
But I also think you'll continue to see that some, because they still will need to match their grant.
yeah, that's right.
50%.
Yeah. No, it's 1-to-1.
Right, and like Chautauqua would probably not have been able to match the entire.
Well,
The
they-
matching requirement is statutory?
It's in the rule, it's 1-to-1, but Ready Communities, Rural Economic Development Initiative Communities, which Chautauqua is in, with City X Springs, their match requirement is 25%. And of that, only 25% has to be cash, so you can get in-kind and other types of match as well. But we'll go over that when we orient the FHC, as we do every year, as a reminder for how, the meeting, applications will be run and the applications will be scored.
So Andy, I'm sorry, because I've got to roll
Okay.
quickly, so I apologize.
All right.
So how many do you think we have this year?
Oh, well, I have that in my report. You will be happy to know that
Under
I
50.
believe because we received full funding last year, we had 42 submitted applications.
Okay.
So we're still going through the review right now, staff review. As always, our goal is to get it to you guys a month ahead of time. So our goal is to have everything to you by the end of July. Some will drop out
I was supposed to say.
as ineligible. No, I know.
You know, it's longer now, but okay.
Well, we just got the small matching out to the small matching panel like a couple weeks ago, because that small matching meeting is in, August 24th, so we had to do both, we do both at the same time.
How many did we have last year, was it?
Last year you had,
It was almost,
Yeah.
you reviewed 83, only
Okay.
76 or 77 moved forward, because some dropped out. Or no, maybe we had 83 applications, so you reviewed 70, because we always have some, withdrawals and.
roughly
So,
half.
Yes, roughly half. And last year, if you remember, and actually the past few years, usually the bulk of them are reviewed on this first day, and you only go to the second day to finalize maybe the last 10, 15, and then we do the scoring. So, depending on how the meeting runs this year, you could potentially, with that number, finish in one day, but you don't need to rush. We have the second day available for, carryover as well.
Well, that's good news. It's a lot easier to prioritize
Yeah.
things when you're not dealing with so many.
Right.
You can sort of focus on the ones you really, want to score really well, and then the others you want to do
Right, and
well.
it'll actually make it
It'll be
easier,
a lot easier.
once we have the recommended funding list, it makes it easier to lobby for, fewer grants probably and a fewer amount. So the amount that's requested right now is 10.6 million, and last year it was 21 million that went to the legislature.
Nothing.
Yeah, drop in the bucket, right?
I was like, should we go out and, could we
Yeah.
find any more? Okay, I mean,
Right, but I will say, just before we move on into the meeting, discussion, which isn't very long either, I just wanted to remind everyone, we've already mentioned the African American Cultural and Historical Grants that we reviewed, back in February. Steve Bertman and Rick Gonzalez sat on that commission, or it was a joint, panel between Historical Resources and Arts and Culture. So that made it even more difficult, and there were 150-something applications to be reviewed.
159, if I remember right.
So I just wanted to give everyone a quick update on that. So the 2021 legislature gave us $30 million for that, and the 2022 legislature added another $30 million and change, which funds 118 projects, of which 70 are being managed by Historical Resources. And that funding is it's federal funding from the American Rescue Plan Act as well. And it's for construction projects all around the state. It was specifically for construction at fixed capital projects. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, I
That's okay.
apologize, and I'm gonna be leaving, so I was late, so. Is there any way you could, I would like to have the final list.
Yes.
I never really was able to get the final list, and
It's actually posted, but I will have Sarah send out a copy to everyone if you're interested. I think you did actually after the
A while back,
meeting.
but if you could resend it.
Yeah,
that'd
we
be
can
great.
resend it. And a lot of really good, interesting projects, but it's just a lot for both our staff and, Arts and Culture, because it was a new program that was put on all of us in addition to our normal programs. But we're getting them out there, because of the funding, the way it worked, it's current year funding. So those are all going out right now, as well as all of the, small matching and special category, open grants that are opening this year. And we're doing closeouts and application reviews. So that's why I'm begging for additional FTEs, but, we persevere. So I guess the only other thing to talk about, we did receive 61 small matching applications, which is similar to last year with 63. So staff finished those, reviews and got that out to the small matching panel to start their scoring, last week, maybe the week before. That meeting is August 24th and 25th. The small matching meeting is entirely webinar, so if you wanted to join in, we can send you the link. You can join and just listen if you would like, but, mostly they'll probably be done on the first day as well. We usually finish that one in one day as well. So just a reminder, again, the special category meeting is September 28th and 29th. 42 applications submitted. We'll probably end up sending you all less than 40, because some always drop out as ineligible or they withdraw during the review process internally. So I would say high 30s, which is great for you all, I'm sure. Yeah. So like I said, the meeting is in person in the R.A. Gray Auditorium on the first floor, but there will also be a webinar option. And many, as you know, that done it before, many of our applicants participate by webinar because it's all over the state and they can't all travel. So we always have that as webinar, as well as in person. And like I said, we're finalizing the staff reviews right now to send everything to you before the end of July or before the meeting. Everything, as usual, will be done through our grant system, dosgrants.com. So if you don't remember your password from last year, maybe start looking for that now. But you can always do a password recovery.
Not really who that thing down, but okay.
And is Tony Corti, are you our only new commissioner right now? I think so, that hasn't scored before.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you'll get, if you want to go in and create a user profile right now, you can, but once we create the panel and the system will send you an invite and say, here's a link, open up your, create your profile then. But, and then we'll do a webinar, an orientation webinar to refresh everyone on how to do the scoring, but nothing has changed from last year for those who've done it before. And if you're traveling, Sarah will send out travel information like she usually does to find out who's traveling and to get that in our travel system ahead of time as well, for those who are going to be coming in person from out of town. And I think that's really it, unless you all have any additional questions about grants or the meeting.
Just two comments.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you did to speed the system up on the Afro-American grant process, I would recommend that we do it again because it was,
okay.
remember, however, it was painfully slow to download applications and review.
They might have had the IT boost that. I'll look into that.
Yeah, let's think about doing that again because that was very problematic. And then the other thing I would mention, just from a staff perspective and, good government, some of those Afro-American grant review projects are going to need a lot more hand-holding than some of the ones that we currently deal with on special categories. So I would recommend that, if you have extra staff, make sure that those guys are, because I know some of those projects, from the local area and,
Yeah, many of those projects, it was great to see people who've never applied for grants before, but then you're dealing with grantees who've never managed a grant before. So, but good.
Suddenly they were like, wait, I got $500,000 and I'm going to go.
Or the projects weren't quite as developed.
Yeah. It was a shortened timeline as well.
Okay, you can't say that.
No, they're great ideas, they're just not quite, a little more.
Okay.
New.
Yeah.
They're newies, right? They're making beginner mistakes.
Yeah. I have a question. What time were we planning to start on the grant review day?
We usually start at 9. I think that, you're in person, but if you were not in our time zone, it would be 8, but you usually come in person.
Thank you, you find that. And it's not 11:30 in Pensacola.
Yeah, right.
Or Panama City. My place.
I think the only time in my recollection, so in the last 7 years, that we started at 8 is when we had over 100, right at 100 to do, but usually starting at 9 works well for everyone to get here and get settled before we get going.
And have everything early, but it's not possible if you're in Panama City, and I'll be here, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll be hardwired into the system, so you'll have access to the computer like there.
Right.
We provide the computers for everyone, so you don't have to bring your own. If you want to, you could, but we have.
Well, I wanted to say something, Angie, about, we can, go to other business, but it's grant business that I want to talk about, is that I want to ask you a question, and this is a cold question to you, so if you don't know, you don't know. What was the average score for special category grant rankings last year? Do you know?
I don't know the average, but in our guidelines, and it's been this way for the past maybe 4 or 5 years, our cutoff is 80 points.
Yes.
Only 3 dropped out last year, so that means everything was scored above 80. So I would say the average is probably somewhere around 90. Right. Yeah, high 80s, low 90s.
There's such a thing as grade inflation.
Yes.
And it troubles me that we are so reluctant to score a project low. slow skating. I mean, I'm not,
Right.
you know,
I-
but in general,
right.
we are. In general,
Yeah.
we are. And this is not everybody gets a trophy time. This is serious business. And if some of these projects that are in the lower tier are really looked at really hard, we could be embarrassed and accused of inflating our rankings on an individual as well as the commission basis. So I want for us to be more critical. Make the applicants must earn their points. Yes, you have to fill out a box if the score is below 80. It is not a hard box to fill out. I have had phone calls from people in my district, applicants, who I ranked low for one reason or another. And it's inappropriate to call me, but they do, and I tell them that the reason is in the box, and that if they would like my help, I would help them make their application stronger next time. They don't like that answer. That's tough.
And you would have loved the Afro-American grant review process on the last day.
Well, I want us to understand that the cost to us of ranking projects low is there's a cost. People will be upset. But we have to be sure that when the day comes, and it will, that one of these projects is a bust, and it gets in the press, and it puts mud
And it's
on
already
the
happened.
road.
I mean, this is not something
But
that is
we have to
not
be
cheap.
very careful
Right.
and keep it in mind. We are the quality control. We are the ones, when we see a dog, and we give it an 80, because we don't want to fill out the box, that is unethical. That is shirking our responsibilities. And I personally am going to be much more critical this year. There are projects that were funded that are marginal. And we never expected the list to get funded, but it did. And if everything works out, we'll get the list funded again. So we have to be more careful now where the funding seems to be coming back. And it is difficult when you see people you know, or people that are there for the third time, or for some reason have a sympathy vote. I think that we need to call a spade, call a dog, call a star. You know, and that an average score in the 90s means we are inflating.
Well, then I would recommend that you give that speech when we start again.
Yes, I will. And I'm serious about it, and there's nothing I can personally do about it except to remind us of our responsibility. You know, and this is not everybody gets a trophy. Not everybody gets a grant because they put in an application for the first or the third time. It is a quality if it's a quality applicant, it gets application, it gets a quality score. If it has trouble, my usual comment for those I put under 80 was the application needs to be strengthened. Maybe on various aspects of it. So anyway, I wanted to say that. I also wanted to let you know that as once the applications are ranked and the list is made, that we will move forward with our coalition. Next time that the 6 organizations that we put together for special category funding, I think it helped. I don't know how much it helped, but something helped. Tony helped. You know, it takes
A great economy.
a lot of people, a great economy.
Tremendous amount of federal dollars.
All right.
Really, really helpful. We don't want to talk about that.
The year before there was a lot, Steve, but we didn't get a nickel.
Well,
We brought it up too, and made it a point, to at least remind our legislators of the program, what we do as a commission for them, to make sure they have quality projects, and to show them it is all throughout the state. I mean, those things get forgotten. There's such turnover in the legislature that it is, easy for them to forget. And it's up to us to remind them. And I think we reminded them on a lot of different levels, not just a money level. but on a distribution level, on a local level. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that that spark is lit. I haven't contacted the other 6 or 5 organizations, but we will. And I see that our role in this coalition is providing them information and providing them support so that their members know who to see, who not to see. Kathleen will do the cross-referencing of leadership in the 2 chambers, where they are, what their districts are, and make sure that the members of the 6 or the 5 organizations know who to talk to and give them some talking points. I think that was really helpful. And, you know, they're just ordinary people, which is the beauty of grassroots. I mean, that is what how our system does work. So, and they have to see us. Senator Roxon, I mean, he likes me, but I mean, he has to see me too, you know, and it's a lot of money. So anyway, and so I'm going to reactivate it. And I think for what we do as a commission, I think it is important that we find a way to get architects. It's just unconscionable, and it's dangerous that we don't have one. So anyway, so that's my spiel. Is there any other business that you all have as commissioners or staff to come before the commission today? All right. Is there any public comment? Members of the public who may be tuning in who want to ask us something?
There is no one online.
All right. Okay, good. So I guess that's the end of our business for today. And it's good times here. And, you know, we are, you know, success also means pain sometimes. And that's all right. I'll take that pain any day. So, all right. So do I need a motion to adjourn? Anybody want to move?
So moved.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.